I've been thinking a lot about masculinity recently, reflecting on my own journey as a man, the journey that my son is embarking on, and the paths that other men in my life choose to take. Some of them I aspire to, others I perhaps want to distance myself from. Now, personally, I disagree with the idea of toxic masculinity. And look, I understand, like it perhaps started as a way to describe incredibly unhealthy and antisocial behaviour by a man. Yet quickly it seemed to become a way to describe so many aspects of manhood which are valid expressions of what it means to be a man. Now, for a long time, I preferred to use things like healthy or unhealthy masculinity rather than saying something toxic. That is until I spoke with Harry Garside. Thanks, man.
Ready to rumble.
Now, normally, when you're getting ready to do something, like I would say, all right, let's do this. You just use the words, let's get ready to rumble.
It's actually in my veins.
And there's something beautiful about that.
So true. Boxing never escapes me.
Thanks for coming, Harry. How you feeling?
I'm grateful to be here. I've obviously seen you growing up on the TV shows and stuff like that. So it's a bit of a pinch myself moment at the moment. But I've had a busy few days, but I love to talk, so I'm excited for this one.
How long have you been back?
Good question. I think it's about just on 2 weeks now. Right. And I spent most of that time with family in Melbourne, so which has been really nice.
People can have disappointments in their life. I've been divorced. That's an example. People knew about it, but, I for the most part, got to go through it fairly privately. But, it's what makes what you do so incredible that you're putting it out there to the world, literally the world. This is what I'm going to achieve. And you have achieved that in the past. And sometimes you don't achieve that. You don't really get to go through it by yourself though, do you?
It's so true. And it's, I think like that, so when I lost at the Olympics and that feeling of like, it's like the embarrassment, and I really reflect on like, what was I embarrassed of? And it's like, I think it's putting yourself in the arena and sort of falling on your face in front of everyone while everyone's watching. But I'm so unbelievably grateful to be Australian right now. It's like crazy for my wildest nightmare to come true. And then to get a big hug from Australia. It's a weird reality because like, I didn't anticipate this. I thought everyone online, people are going to think this, they're going to be saying this, I'm a failure, I'm a drop kick, I'm this. But everyone's just going, come here, mate, give me a hug, you're not a failure. So it's been unbelievably, I can't even articulate what it's felt like. It's a really weird reality that I'm in right now.
Yeah, I can imagine the snow globe has still got all the stuff falling. I think there must be a lot of stuff still kind of swimming around. So let me just kind of ask you, like, what's it like to go, all right, nutrition plan's out the window, here I go. What's that first meal like?
It's real dirty and greasy and trashy, and I love it. We all love it, and it's so funny. All boxers do the same thing. So obviously boxing is a making weight sport, and like I was on a diet for pretty much all of this year, right, leading into the Olympics, and I was on that edge of like really struggling to make that weight, and I made it, felt good, felt competitive. And then to have 10 days in Paris where I just got some time with family and a couple of friends that come over, I just got like to eat. It was actually beautiful food. France has got beautiful food, but like I was still going into Macca's. It's like I never go there. But I'm like, you just want like, I was just thrashing my body with food. And then after about 3 days, you put on 10, 15 kilos almost. It's wild how quickly it goes on. Really? It's mostly just fluid and your body holds on to fluid because it's in survival. And then like to just feel yourself like a bit of a bowling ball. I'm like, I've had enough of this. But 3 or 4 days, it's just like demolishing as much food as I can.
Do you have 2 sets of clothes?
That's so interesting because I always think that boxers always are conscious of this. So when we do like the sizing for the Olympic uniform, it'd be months in advance. And we are so much bigger than what we're going to be when we fight. And then you got to be conscious of like, do I take that into consideration or do I want to wear the Olympic clothes after where I'm going to be bigger? It's like you don't know what to do.
Can you do 2 for us, guys?
Yeah. Like, we have a budget.
It's just such an extraordinary sport. In the last number of years, MMA has shown up as like, this is the thing. But I don't care who you are. You don't know your angles for Brazilian jiu-jitsu sleeper holds, but you're pretty much born knowing what a fist does. And so it seems like a such more relatable sport.
It's quite interesting. Obviously, we don't want to highlight this sort of stuff, but if you ever see two blokes fighting at the pub, it's like they always start in the boxing stance. I don't know if it's an animal instinct that comes out or it's because they've watched too much boxing. It's been around for so long. And then eventually they get split up or they end up on the ground wrestling. But it always seems to start like that. And it's like you watch, I always think that if you really pay attention to how humans operate, it's like you can pick an animal that they're doing very similar things at. It's like you walk through a train station, you see how we walk like ants behind each other. You watch certain things and you look at kangaroos. Look what they do, back on the back tail. They're throwing hands. They fight. And it's beautiful to watch. That's just rocking the head back. Oh, my God. It's intense, right? It's intense. But I think we always forget that. We disconnect ourselves from the animal kingdom. But I always think that that's all we are at the end of the day is animals. And that's why I really like boxing, because it enabled me to control that animal instinct a lot better.
And this is something I'm quite fascinated by with our youngest. He's just turned 5 and we go to jiu-jitsu on a Saturday morning, and it's something I want to do for him because I never learned what to do when the lion showed up. All right. I was about 14 or so. It's the only time I've ever hit anybody. This guy was bullying me in the tuck shop line. I smashed him so hard I split my knuckles, and then I ran and started crying because I was hurt so much to hurt somebody else, and B, I was so scared that this thing happened without me even thinking about it. And I was kind of lucky that it happened. I wasn't as big as I am now, but I wasn't far off. At 14, I was pretty big. A young man has this capacity for lethal violence at the age of 13, 14. And if they're not taught how to control that, the choice made when you've got literally no impulse control, because it's not in your brain at that stage, can end your life, ruin your life.
I always think that like of course we are disconnected, as I just mentioned, from the animal kingdom. It's like what you just said, you watch a situation happen where it's like a mum who's a grown adult is in between a dangerous situation and her kid. You watch that primal mother nature come out, and it is beautiful to watch. But she'll move mountains to get in that way. Or it's a beautiful thing. And it's like, I think combat sport, not just boxing, but combat sport does that for people, right? Doesn't matter if you're a boy, doesn't matter if you're a girl. It gives you a space where you can find out what your body's capable of, what your body isn't. You learn a bit of self-confidence, a bit of self-love, because I know right now, and I'm not flexing, but I know right now that we live in a beautiful country. It's very unlikely, but if someone come in right now and was like dangerous or deadly, I would feel like I would run straight at it. Like I would put myself in the firing line and go at it. And I have noticed this with, say, someone like my dad, right? This happens inevitably. Like he's 55, 56. He's getting towards past middle age now. And it's like, I feel like he doesn't feel like he can protect his family anymore. And then in that, he's getting more pessimistic. He's getting more like, because body isn't capable. He's lived a hard life, and his body isn't capable of, like, if an intruder come, he would be very fearful, right? And I noticed his mindset changed. I think it's really important for humans to be able to protect themselves. It's in us, right? And I feel way more secure because I know I can. And I know I can right now. And I think it's really important for humans to feel that.
Sometimes people get into boxing in different ways. Well, how did you get into it?
Yeah, so I started boxing at the age of 9, and I'm the youngest of 3 boys, and I felt really soft and different to them. They were quite masculine. They were quite fearless. They seemed to run at dangerous situations, no worries, right? Where I had all this like fear. I felt my head noise, and I've sort of let my head noise get the better of me a lot, and I didn't run at things head on. And what do you see on movies growing up? You see these action figures, Clint Eastwood, Rambo, like these big, strong characters, right? That's what man is. That's what being a man is. And I feel like my manhood constantly was questioned by myself, and probably by, if I had that belief, I collected the evidence that was true. And then at the age of 9, I decided to do something different. I played basketball quite competitively and a few other sports, but I told my mum, and she's like, "Do you want to start boxing?" Like you can see in her eyes, you're like the softest one in the family. What do you want to start boxing for? And then, I walked into a boxing gym and fell in love with the sport almost instantly. Yeah.
Wow. You keep using the word soft. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's interesting because I look back at my life, and I probably was, in the sense of like I would probably tear up a lot more. I would, as I said, wasn't fearless. I wasn't this, but it's so interesting that I think that what I've realized over the last couple of years is like masculinity comes in many forms. And I have compared myself to this Rambo type character, right? Right, this real strong, but it's like I also know that I'm strong in my own way, and I love that, right? And I'm not soft. I know that I'm hard. I know that I'm stoic, and I know that I can get through anything. But I didn't feel that at the age of 7, 8, 9. Yeah.
Yeah, look, and I understand. Thank you for explaining that, because I definitely understand that you can't be what you can't see, and there were so many men in the community. Men would bring people together, and they would lead, and there was a benevolence, and you needed to have an empathy to understand what's going on with this person here. All right, you might call that soft because you're feeling a bit teary. But if you're feeling another person's pain, it doesn't make you weak. It makes you understand what's going on. I am now a protector if I'm choosing to, put resources or my body or whatever towards protecting this person. That puts me in a position of power, right? But it was never really in the zeitgeist, essentially, that version of masculinity. It was sports dudes. It was, VHSs with blokes, or DVDs in your case, blokes shooting up stuff, breaking up with girlfriends because they couldn't get a hug.
It's so interesting. So I've been thinking about this. Is my own analogy, and I haven't told anyone this before, right? Besides my partner. But I believe masculinity, and people think they hear masculinity, they instantly think man. Of course, masculinity comes in many forms. I know a lot of women who have really strong masculine traits, and they're strong, powerful. My mum is one of them. She's a really powerful woman, right? But I think masculinity is the stabilizing trunk in a tree. It's the one where all the wind pushes it, but they stand there strong. They do the things underneath the surface, like the acts of service. They provide, they protect, they get the things. The feminine energy is the leaves, the beauty, the flow. And we see that. We look at the leaves and we love the leaves. They look so good, but they need both in order to be there, right? And the log of a tree cries, it bleeds when it needs to, right? And I think that masculinity, whether that be a man, whether that be a woman, is that stabilizing trunk who does a lot behind the surface, underneath the ground that we don't see.
I love that, man. I absolutely love that. And it provides shelter, provides shade. You'd give your life, but you'd build a house out of it,
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, right? And I think we both need each other. I think right now the world's in a really strange place. We've almost overcomplicated things, but I love challenging ideas, but I also think that humans need each other more than anything right now, and genders need each other more than anything right now. And it's like I think we both need to look out for each other, and most people are heterosexual, like in this society. And it's like we need each other more than anything. I don't know, it's just part of it, right? And I love my female counterparts. I love them. Like they're so beautiful. I've always connected better with females because I feel like I've got that side to me. But I also know a lot of men aren't really like that. They wouldn't open up like I would, and I get that, and I respect that too.
So if you were presenting as a kid like you were describing, what was school like? They're really formative years.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I felt like I was quite soft compared to my brothers, but I entered school at the same primary school my brothers went to, and then the same high school my brothers went to, and they were real rough around the edges. They were like class clowns, rat bags. Like they did heaps of naughty stuff and always getting kicked out of class. I'm pretty sure my brother held the record for being suspended the most times in primary school, like wild, right?
Oh, yeah.
But just it was wild. But I entered school and I instantly felt I'm a Garside. I felt like I had to play this role of being a Garside, right? So I started playing what they were doing. I started acting like them, and I felt like this most of my life until about the age of 15, 16, where I was like quite tense, but I was just being them. Yeah, right. I wasn't being myself. And then I was lucky that at the age of 16, some youth organization come to my school and gave me an opportunity on that day, but then also the years to come after that, where I could just delve into myself. And
what happened? What was that?
So the Reach Foundation, you may have heard of Jimmy Steins, Paul Curry. They started this foundation years ago, and they did a male workshop and a female workshop, but they just did a male workshop for myself and for all my mates in the year level. On that day, the thing they challenged most was masculinity. There's so many beautiful traits in masculinity, right, and manhood. But there is a lot of things that we need to look at and challenge and question. And I guess the video they showed, I'll never forget it. It was just like all things that men do, right, in our society. And it's like fights, jumping off, at the time it was like jumping off the roof onto tables with heaps of bottles, winning sports things. Like there was some positive things, there was some negative things, but it's like, what does it mean to be a man in our society? And it was a really interesting topic. And I think that day was a day where I could actually delve into myself and ask myself more questions about who I am. And as I said, it wasn't just that day. I eventually become a crew member and learned a lot becoming a crew member, and then went out to schools myself and run workshops, which was awesome.
What's it like to, run a workshop? I'm assuming by this point you're in your 20s or something, like you finished school. What's it like to run a workshop and see, I don't know, 14, 15, 16-year-old boy, and seeing that one and go, all right.
There's always someone in the room that holds a lot of power. And it's often that rat bag kid who can say at the age of 15, 16, they can sort of pick on people, and they're tough, they're strong, they're usually quite big. And they're the ones that, like, it's so interesting because they're the ones who, I wouldn't say they have the biggest story, but they have a rich story as well. And then there's like a hook, and there's a moment where you chuck a few hooks out, and it's like that call to adventure. They get the opportunity to go on the hero's journey. And if they take that hook, there's a lot of resistance. But often if you get them early in the day, it gives everyone else the permission to be vulnerable.
Such as?
Right.
What kind of hook are we talking?
So you ask them a question, right? And it'll be more real. And they'll often, so in a situation, you would ask them a personal question like, what's home like for you? And often it's males, they would take the piss at that age. They take the piss and make a joke. All their mates are laughing, thinking, how good's this? And you ask a couple of other follow-up questions, right? You pay more attention. And then eventually they will get slower to the surface. Doesn't always happen, but I would say 8 times out of 10 it does. And they take that chance, right? Because they have most likely felt in their life, no one has listened to them. No one has cared about them. Once you start hearing their home situation, you start realizing they've got a story, and they need someone to be there for them, to care for them, to listen to them, to actually validate them. And then in that moment, all the other people in the class or the year level are looking at them like, whoa, we never realized this, because as young people, we don't realize that, right?
No.
There's people who are bullying and picking on other people. They've also got a hectic story, right? They probably had to look after their parents or look after their brothers who are injecting drugs or doing this, doing that. Like, it's a wild story for some young people in our society, worldwide. Yeah. And I love those moments because they take, and it doesn't always happen, but they take the chance and they step to it. And they're often great leaders when they do.
Oh man. There's a point as we go up where we start looking for someone who's a father-ish kind of figure, but not our dad. Usually it's someone around their age, but it could be someone younger in a mentor space. And, it's classic, your own father will say, buddy, you got to study, otherwise you won't even get into TAFE. What the fuck? And fuck off. But then that same person, similar age or maybe a bit younger, says, hey, how's it going, man? Have you heard about that cert course? You're like, yeah, I should really do harder work. If it's not the dad telling you, they'll listen, right? And it's such an important point in a young man's life to have that guy around. Previously the way we evolved, that guy would always be there because we were in a smaller community. Now that guy sometimes someone on their phone selling him a fucking PDF or some weird pill or some shit. I
always think that, like, obviously right now with the world we're living in, it's like right now teenage boys are going through the stage of that Andrew Tate guy. It's like they're turning towards someone like that. It's like, if that isn't a clear sign that they're being misunderstood right now, they're turning to someone like that. It's like society should probably pay attention to that a bit more, a little bit more closely.
It's difficult sometimes to talk about because I don't want to self-edit, right? But I think we actually have to have a bit of a think about just blindly making young men wrong without any investigation. Yeah, they're idiots. They have no idea how to drive this fucking tractor they're in. But there's suddenly this big, powerful machine and that can do and say stuff, and they've got no idea what to do with it. And if there's no one around to help them, like, how could they possibly know?
I wrote a book recently, and it's just been released, and I talk about don't call it toxic masculinity.
No, man,
I understand this, the term at the start. I get it. It actually come from a good place. It started a while ago. It come from a good place because there is 100%, as I just mentioned, there's things to the masculine trait that we need to look at and question. And manhood is a really interesting thing. But I think if you're continuously telling someone who's 11, 12, 13, they've got phone, they're constantly saying men are toxic, men are this, men are that, it's like, inevitably, surely they're thinking these things inside myself, they don't fully know themselves yet. The thing inside myself, I'm toxic if I show this anger, aggression, this competitive nature. It's like if I show that I'm toxic, so then I suppress it, and then online when no one's looking, I look at someone like Andrew Tate, it's like, yeah, he's speaking to me, he's validating me, society's not. It's honestly so clear to see. Like, how do we not realize this is a society? And I just think, I don't know. I don't want to sit here and say that young boys have it harder than young girls, because they've got their own struggles, right? Young people have their own struggles. Like you can
have two. Like both can be hard. Like you can have two conflicting ideas at the same time.
Coexisting realities, of course. Yeah. It's an interesting thing. I just think it's a really weird reality. I know every generation probably said this. I know, like, back when I was younger, that the generation were like, oh, geez, the younger generation are this or that. Like, I think it is inevitable that we do that because it is a different reality. But I just do believe right now, young people waking up, have a phone at 11 years old, they're still in primary school, and they look and they see what's going on in the Middle East. They see what's going on in the USA. It's like, what the hell? They're 11. They're 11 years old. I don't know. I genuinely have empathy for them. I genuinely have care.
Yeah. It changes the way your brain's wired, and it changes your threat response, and it changes your empathy, changes your ability. If you become desensitized, you end up, it gets weird. It gets pretty pathological, your inability to, feel empathy. Like we get born. It's funny, we're talking about boxing, but if I watch a boxing match, I know what it's like to get hit in the head, right? And when you see people take a big one, like, oh my God, But if you get so desensitized, you won't even, even if I talk about kicking you in the nuts, you just flinched, right?
Yeah.
Anyone listening that's got nuts has just done that. But could you imagine getting to a point where you're so desensitized to the pain of another that just passes by you, like watching a seagull fly by, whatever, a pigeon, something that doesn't matter to you? Like, that's not okay. That's the deconstruction of our ability as humans to interact. You don't like the word toxic. I don't like it either. How do you talk about masculinity that is perhaps not conducive to help?
Immature and mature masculinity.
Oh, talk to me about that.
Yeah. So I would say, like, immature masculinity was that want to prove, was that beat my chest. You mean, look how strong I am. Look at my armor. Look at me, the warrior, right? The one who runs in and I'm so tough. Yeah, I'd say that's immature masculinity. I think secure masculinity is, I don't know, the one working behind the scenes, providing for the family. Yeah, the one who's stable, secure, the one that everyone turns to when there's a storm and everything's been knocked down. Yeah, that's mature masculinity. Mature masculinity
and immature masculinity. That's I like that better than I was previously talking about it as healthy and unhealthy.
Very much the same. Yeah.
But I like the idea of, it's a little more aspirational to put immature and mature on it. I really like that.
I did steal it. I would love to say that it's mine, but it's not. I heard it on a podcast. I can't remember what he said.
I got it from you. Yeah. It doesn't matter. This is how ideas are around. This is what happens with ideas, man.
100%.
Like 100%. Ideas. Someone invented a limerick, and now there's this billion of them. Like someone 1,000 years ago is dead going, that's my fucking line. That's my rhyming scheme. Doesn't matter, Once the idea's out. Once it's out, it's out. Once the toothpaste's out the tube, it's out, man. But I like the idea of immature masculinity and mature masculinity, because nobody wants to be a little boy making childish decisions or treating people like that. We'll see what it's like to be a toddler. It's pretty hard, though, when those kind of choices get made by 23-year-old blokes with neck tats and, they've got a friend with a bum bag down the gym and they're just massive. Next thing you know, they make a decision in the blink of an eye that changes everyone around them.
I must admit, and I'm such a flawed human, and I always have coexisting realities inside myself. I wouldn't say I've got split personality, but I'm like, I've just got so many facets to myself, and I always know that inside of me there's like that judgment, there's like that, oh, look at them, like there's that critique, right? But then there's also this want to, like, I don't know, have compassion and empathy, and I try and sit there as much as I can, and I don't always live up to that. But it's like, I always think, I see those people, I grew up in an area where there's a lot of bikies and stuff like that. I'm like, they're grown men acting like little boys. I'm like, what is going on right now? If that's not just like, what do they need? Like, what do they need? Do they need, is that what they're looking for? Connection? Are they looking for certain things? Like, what do they actually need from society? I guess not to be like that. Or are they happy? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what's right. I don't know if it's me being arrogant, pushing my way of my world onto them. Like, they should live like other people. It's like, am I right to say that? I don't know.
Walking down the street as a man in my, late teens or early 20s, I feared that I grew up in Brisbane, and so you saw violence on the street, and I see guys possibly they might have seen John Wick and thinking this is how it's going to go, and they wade into something, and then about 2 seconds flat, someone who's 40 centimetres shorter than them, it's just that's it. You're in rehab for the next 5 months trying to swallow again.
Yeah. It's wild. Honestly, it's wild how quickly that stuff can happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a wild thing, and that just shows like that primitive nature, that animalistic instinct. It's like if you can't control it, it will control you.
You mentioned before if someone came in here and it was a threat, But what is it walking through the world knowing that you've got this? I can only imagine having that, do everything you possibly can to never, ever, ever use it.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like one of my good friends in Sydney, we went for lunch, and I was walking through, and we were in, I think it was Glebe, and it was just like there was some interesting characters walking around, and I'm always aware of what's going on, and I think it's that makes me hyper aware. I feel like I don't know what it is, but it's like the protective nature, right? I just want my friend to be safe, and of course nothing's happened to us, and most of the time nothing does. We live in a great society, but yeah, it's a weird thing. And definitely there was times in my childhood or teenage years where I feel like I was still very insecure and I had to beat my chest. And I'm just grateful now that I guess most of the time I don't need to. I don't feel like I need to. I know that if push comes to shove, you watch what I do.
I've seen guys who, I used to work with security guys who, like ex-SAS kind of guys, I think kill you with their fingernail if they wanted. And they just have something in their voice. They walk up to whoever is being an idiot and they just, do we have a problem? I don't think you want us to have a problem. You think about what you're doing? And I just watch these guys turn to water because they have a thing in their voice that says, I've done shit in Northern Africa that I can't sleep at night because of. And they hear it. They hear it. The enough hears it in their voice. And these guys just like fall at the knees. So as I mentioned, I trained a little bit. It was an interesting guy. It was early kind of UFC days. One of the guys, he lived in Los Angeles. His job was to teach the jiu-jitsu guys how to punch. All right. And I went to go train with him. I was with him for a couple of months. I was still drinking at the time. It was useless. But far out, man. The conditioning stuff was just nuts, man. And I remember this kid that I eventually got to the point where I was putting on the headgear and sparring this, like a 14-year-old, right? This guy didn't even break a sweat. And he moved so fast I couldn't see him. And I was like, holy fuck me. He occasionally tapped me on the headgear. It scared the shit out of me, right? As you're going into like a big fight, you would know more about what it is to face pretty certain pain than anybody. What do you want people to know about literally stepping into the ring and testing yourself like that?
Yeah, I feel like I'm moving my body the way I'm supposed to as an animal. Yeah, I think it's the most pure place I can go. I wrote a poem, if I remember lines of it, was like, it's like as the world begins to feel ever so quiet, as my mind begins screaming war cries, never do I feel so alive, never do I feel so in my body. Man versus man, ego versus ego. Grateful to be reminded all that we are is barbaric animals trying to act civilized. And I think it's so true. I don't know. And boxing is a weird thing. Combat sport in general, like I think most combat athletes would probably agree. Like there's times that it hurts, but it's like that primal nature comes out and it's like your adrenaline's pumping. You probably get hurt more in a corky from AFL than what you would in boxing at times. Most of the time, 9 times out of 10, you would get hurt more from a football game than you would boxing. But of course, it's a beautiful sport because it is that pure nature of combat, which I think we've all done to survive, or our ancestors did to survive.
So many people, and I've certainly done this myself, it happened to me the other day at the gym, turn away from truly testing ourselves. Like, I really want to do this, but then if it doesn't work, then I'll know that I'm not good enough to get that job, or I'm not good enough to date that person, or I'm not a great parent. Because ultimately, when you step through those ropes, it's you against you. You're testing yourself, and the other person is trained as hard as you. They want it just as much as you. What do you get out of doing that? What do you get out of testing yourself, of willingly walking towards that test?
I think I've turned myself into the man that my younger self didn't think he was. I mean, I'm quite proud of that. Like I know I've been doing this weird challenge. So I do one challenge a month for the last 5.5 years. I'm actually currently doing my 68th month in a row. And it's called the Uncomfortable Challenges. And I've done things like 50 hours, no talking, improv class, wore makeup, a full face of makeup for a day. I begged for money for a couple of hours. I've washed windows at lights. Like, I've done a number of things, right? Some are fun, some are hard, some are physical, some are emotional. But each challenge I've learned something from. And I think the world we live in right now, the Western world, it's almost like our ancestors did too well, that it's like, we've got it real good in Australia. Most people have got it real good in Australia. And it's like, in that, our body is naturally hardwired to protect itself as much as it can. So if we can conserve energy and be in a comfortable place, we can conserve energy for the time that we're going to be in stress, right? Because that's how we're hardwired. And it's like, right now, it's like the comfort is the Netflix, the couch, the clothes, the heater, the warm showers. Like, these are all things we didn't have 100 years ago. Right? It's wild to think that not that long ago we didn't have that. And it's just like, I think there is so much in our society pulling us in a way of comfort so that it keeps us stuck. It keeps us small. And I think the more that you can consciously push yourself, whether that be a hard training session, whether that be having a cold shower in the morning, whether that be, you know your poison, you pick your poison, and make sure you do it, and feel that elation when you achieve it, and feel how you shed your skin and you get a little bit bigger, and you continuously do that day after day after day. Ooh, you watch that transformation.
Because there's our body has an adaptation response to stress. When I got quite sick, a large part of it was turning away from the thing that I was terrified of. I want to scroll past those stories, and I know, no, man, you got to read it. You got to read it. So click on it. I read it. I feel all the shit in my body. I'm like, okay, there it is. Take a couple of risks. And then it's not as scary as it was 5 minutes ago. But if I scroll past it, it's even scarier the next time, you know, and it gets harder. Way harder.
And that's why, like, I generally have empathy for people that if they've lived a certain way for so long, it's so hard to bite the bullet and change that thing, whatever you want to change inside yourself. That's why I think it's always like, start small. Start small, cold shower in the morning, just do it, and even just finish in a cold. You don't have to start on it, but just do something, right? Just do something that's, you could even like mow the lawns out the front, like, but just say you're going to do something that you don't want to do and do it, and then feel that. Actually sit in it for 5 seconds and go, I did that. Like, I did that for myself. I chose to do that. Like, oh, what a feeling. What a feeling.
What do you get to take with you from the rest of your life after your time in Paris? Because you didn't get the thing you wanted.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I definitely don't think I'm calling it quits on boxing, but it's quite fascinating to really have. I think that when I started the journey of my Olympic stardom, or wanting Olympic stardom, it was from potentially a negative place. I don't fully know, but it was from a place of like, maybe when I get there, it's like everyone will think that I'm good enough, that I'm worthy enough.
Then I. The classic.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. I went on a 20-year journey, and through that journey, I finally realized that I'm good enough. And it's like, I'm in the sense of like, and then in that, it's like, I don't actually care too much about like achieving a goal. It's like, of course, I think it's really important to set a massive, whatever my next goal is, set a big, audacious goal that feels unachievable, that feels out of my grasp, whatever it is. If that's like being a CEO of a company, it's just an example, right? And then in the process of that, it might take 15 years, but I become a better version of myself, even if I don't get to that destination. But I'll try my hardest to get there, and I hope I achieve it. But if I don't, it doesn't impact who I am as a person. I know who I am. I'm happy with who I am. I'm a curious, loving, caring, deeply flawed, complex human who is always striving to get better. And I love that about myself.
And I love that you're also somebody that wears nail polish, sometimes wears clothes that aren't pants, does ballet. People struggle. What's the thing that you think people struggle with the most about the kind of, alternate ways that you show yourself to the public?
I think it's just, and I felt this most of my life. When I was in high school, I felt I had to play the role that was pushed on me by society, and that was being more like my brothers, play the role of a Garside. And I'm guilty of this in many environments in my life. So it's I think the biggest thing is just like, we've been told stories upon stories upon stories about how to live our life from generations and generations before, and no one really knows. And I don't think we spend too much time questioning those things. And I heard this story and I absolutely love it. It's like this man saw his wife cooking a roast, and she chopped half the roast in half and then put it in the oven. He's like, what the hell is she doing that for? So he asked, so why'd you do that? He's like, my mum did that, when I was older. And then when I was younger, And then they went to the mum, they asked her, why did you do that? And she's like, Grandma used to do that, and Grandma was still alive. She's in the retirement village, and they went to her and they said, back in my day, we had to chop the lamb in half to fit into the oven. It's just like, we live stories upon stories upon stories, and some of them don't serve us anymore, right? But it's like, we live in this archaic world of what does it mean to be a man? It means to be stoic and strong, and some of them are really good traits. There's also some traits that I'm like, oh, we probably could look at that and maybe evolve that a little bit more. I'm not sure. That's what I think anyway. I'm just trying to challenge it and question it and do it with like honor and pride and come from a pure place. I never try and disrespect anyone. I'm not right. I'm not wrong. I'm just doing it how I want.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's a great way of talking about what's not really serving us. What have we been doing without thinking about it? It's kind of fascinating.
I've just noticed in my life that it's just patterns after patterns after patterns until you recognize the pattern, and then hopefully if you want to level up, you can level up. If the pattern serves you, keep running it, right?
Yeah, right.
But that's what I'm just trying to do, is just try and recognize the pattern, just try and recognize what I always do. And it might look different, but the same emotions are coming up again and again and again. And I'm just like, it's up to me. If it doesn't serve me anymore, then I'll try my best to evolve it. If it does, keep going.
Well, mate, whatever direction it is, I don't know, like if you go up a weight class, if you become like, because you're tall, man, you're taller than me. I don't know how the hell you're 63.5 kilos.
Oh, mate, I was struggling. I was really struggling.
Jesus, man, you're taller than I am. Like, you got a lot of reach on you, but, and I'm 81, right? You put some meat on you, then you change divisions and go pro. What happens now?
I'll probably get eaten for breakfast. Who knows? We'll see what happens.
I don't know. There's a lot of training that goes into that. I can only imagine. Like, does the phone ring off the hook when you're you? When you're you? Do promoters just go, come on, mate, in 18 months from now?
Oh, of course, there's definitely some people pulling it. But I've always lived with this intention, like try and move with pure intentions, and I'll never be a puppet in anyone else's game. I'll always be a master of my own reality.
Garside Promotions launching now.
Let's go.
Be your own promoter, mate. You run the whole ticket. You run the whole book. It'll be,
Floyd Mayweather did do it, and he's one of the most well off. If that's what you're chasing, I'm not really chasing that, but yeah.
Man, sports is weird. You can be make some questionable choices in your life. But if you kick enough goals, take enough wickets, take enough whatever.
Everyone overlooks it.
Everyone's like, yeah, but he did that thing.
Yeah.
Remember?
I literally had this conversation with someone the other day. I think I was on radio, and I was saying, like, in our society, we prop up these people, and I've been that. I felt like when I was the most successful, I was probably the most evil to the people closest to me, right? And I can reflect on that. It's like a weird, I don't fully understand. I was quite young, but our society kind of props up these CEOs, or these successful athletes, these people who show success in this way. But it's like, there's people who work in like child cancer wards, work in long shifts, like hearts so pure, and we don't even bat an eyelid to them. It's like this world is toxic. This Western world is toxic.
Doesn't have to be.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. There's so much beauty in it too. But there's so many parts that are like, ooh.
The thing is though, Harry, the beauty doesn't make the news.
Yeah, we don't care about it.
No, we
It's
don't.
how we're hardwired, right?
We are. We actually have a negativity bias. It's what kept our ancestors alive. This is why things like a gratitude practice is really important, to almost offset that negativity bias. It's why, look, the negativity bias has made reactive news organizations a lot of money by playing on our, what's happening, as you mentioned with your dad, playing on this, need for fear. And we kind of get into it. We kind of get a thrill off the little hit that we get in our tummy about it. And so we want more of it, more of it, more of it, more of it. But that's not, 1.4 million Australians, I think. No, 4 million Australians will drive home safely today. You'll see one car crash on the news and think, oh, roads are dangerous.
Yeah, chuck the seatbelt on. Yeah, it's
They're
so
not.
true. So true.
Well, we should wear a seatbelt, but
I know
it's
what
not
you're saying,
representative.
Yeah, it's true. Good point.
As you mentioned a few times, like wildly, people are good. People really just generally want to be good.
I've always thought that. I think like more often than not, and I would argue like 99% of the time, it's like humans want very similar things. They might vote for a different person. They might believe different things. You might be left wing, they might be right wing, but it's like they care about their family, their friends to be well off, happy and healthy. We're all the same. It's like, and we critique each other so much. Yes, you can never fully get along with everyone, but it's just like, if you really pin it down, they just care about those things, right?
And I care about those things too. Maybe we can sit at the table and figure out how we can all have enough of what we care about to make us feel like things are okay. It's not like if you have it, I can't have it. That's not what it works. It's not like that.
So there's enough to go around.
We're very lucky.
Yeah.
Harry, it's unbelievable to speak to you, man.
Yeah, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure.